my God!
Big goal to go from the two. Toss sweep one for James White. Cuts it up with the right arm. Cuts it upfield. Driving forward. Diving to the goal line. A touchdown! And a title for the Patriots!
I can't believe it!
Play clock at 5. Pass is intercepted at the goal line by Malcolm Butler.
45 remaining. Tatum drives down and throws it down. Bases loaded. 2 out. Hard hit into right. Back at the wall. Tie game. Big Poppy.
No icing. For the first time in 39 years, the Boston Bruins have won the Stanley Cup.
Anything's possible.
Good evening. Hope you guys are having a great night. For those that have not ever gone and seen my show on the MI6 and MI6 Sports Network, welcome. This is Kicking It with Kruse. I am your host, Ben Kruse. And it's been a while. We're officially now into 2025. So I do want to wish everybody that has greatly appreciated my content from last year. We are in for another great year, I think, ahead with a lot of great stuff coming up. Topic-wise, there's obviously a lot that's going on. I decided to take some time off, at least from this program, because I was on vacation this past week and this week kind of until the New Year holiday. So hopefully you guys had a great holiday break. I know I did for sure. And so now I feel like I'm kind of back into reality here with the new year, new beginnings, fresh start. And I can't wait to basically get everything on the road here. So for those that don't know about Kicking with Kruse, welcome in. For those that do know, welcome as well. For those that want to know in terms of where to follow my stuff content-wise, at least throughout the year, just like last year, follow us right here down the ticker bar below. Follow us in the MI6 and MI6 Sports Network on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. Also, feel free to follow me on my Twitter at BenCruz144, all lowercase, by the way. So, yeah, just all of that stuff there. What are the topics here for the show tonight? Pretty much a lot of stuff. Obviously, this is kind of the overall order of pretty much a lot of the topics that I talk about. Really, we talk about here on the program, just like last year, NFL, MLB, NBA, and definitely a little bit of college football. I know college is basically coming to the end, but I do want to kind of talk a little about some college football tonight. Definitely want to talk about some NBA, MLB, NFL. In terms of our guests for tonight, I don't believe I'm going to have any guests. I'm not sure. I know my co-host Isaiah Leon. Shout out to you, Isaiah, for being a great co-host for my program for most of last year, and definitely have some couple of other people along the road here. So we'll see what 2025 presents in terms of my fellow co-hosts throughout this year as well. But at least for tonight, I think we're going to go ride solo, at least for the first show of 2025. So if you guys like what you're seeing, make sure right over here in the comment section as well, too, throughout the program. Feel free to send a comment over. And I'd love to see the comments, at least throughout the show. And anything that you guys want to have, feel free to put in. I greatly will appreciate reading any type of comments at the end of the show. So, without further ado, I think we're going to start with the NFL. And crazy enough, this NFL week is the last official week of the regular season. I feel like we always say this every single year, but the football season really flew by. I feel like that happens every year. But this year specifically, this NFL season really flew by. So we are going to get into the NFL Week 18 schedule, and I'm going to give you guys my picks to basically kick off this overall program. Now, obviously, the NFL playoff picture is in full swing. I know that, of course, I have not been on here in a long period of time, so I will make sure to get into that stuff as well for you guys. So give me 1 second. All right. So here, in terms of the games, we're just going to kind of go through them. Obviously, my New England Patriots, I'll kind of do a quick team report, at least before we start, because like I said, it's been a while since I've been back on here, and I want to make sure for you guys in terms of everything of how I feel with my overall team, where they stand, and yeah, that's basically everything. List for the Pats. So the Pats, as a obviously as an overall season, was another really tough year. I think we pretty much had a pretty good idea about that coming into this year, but yeah, just really disappointing. They're 3-13. They're in last in the division. The only 3 wins that they had this year were against the Bengals, which was the first week of the season, which at the time it felt like kind of a good start to the year, and maybe at least the second week against Seattle they lost it, but they lost the game, but they were literally right there at the end. So I thought maybe for most of the season that they would be right there by the end of it. And I wasn't, it didn't obviously wasn't meant to be. But I will say at least in most of their games that they have played, they have been relatively competitive. And besides this past game where they faced the Chargers at home at Gillette, it was on New Year's Eve weekend. Oh, I'm sorry, the weekend after Christmas, leading into New Year's and New Year's Eve, and that was the first eye-opening game of they just simply got their ass kicked, just left and right, offensively, turnovers, defensively they're getting cooked left and right. The Chargers obviously a really good team, but just the fact that you would have thought going cross country. Herbert really hasn't been great at Gillette, at least in the past. I know obviously without Belichick there, it's really not much of a factor, but that was really the only game of the whole year that they just didn't decide to show up. And just I know there's been a lot of scrutiny in terms of really what's happened with this team. Of course, a lot of people are speculating it's the coaching. There's a lot. Offensive corner, Alex Van Pelt, Jerron Mayo, Robert Kraft. The Crafts obviously have been a massive blame to it. And obviously there's been a lot of frustration by players, including some players like Giovanni Tavai, Devon Godchuk, Dietrich Wise, a lot of defensive players basically calling out after the fans last week really voiced their frustration with a shit ton of boos after the team was getting absolutely their doors blown off at halftime. And basically a lot of players are pretty much saying that, we're doing what we can. We're trying to get better. I understand that, but I do think that, and I think the special team coach of the Patriots actually today or yesterday during a press conference basically got asked about the same exact question. And he basically said, while we do understand the voice of frustration, there are some people that are Patriot fans that aren't locals. It's one thing if you're a local and you can go to a bunch of games and, it's what it is, right? You're obviously frustrated. But if you're a fan that's going from, California or out of country, it's a really big population of Patriot fans that are coming from out of country. They're going to games to Foxborough, and you see a product like they had last week where not only they lost, but they were just absolutely non-competitive, and the product was absolutely abysmal. Let alone the weather wasn't good either. So that's kind of an overall thing of you have you can boo, you can cheer. That's part of being a fan. And I think that players should understand that, when you go into a specific game, you're specifically a voice of entertainment. And if they basically see something where you just simply did not show up to your best availability, especially with the team that is 3-13, and you want to try to at least play for pride at the end of the season, and you basically give that overall product, you should be able to get scrutinized by a shit ton of boosts from fans that pretty much are seeing what they're seeing. So it's just a lot of just tension every single week, and it sucks. The one good thing about the Patriots though this year have been, of course, they found their quarterback in Drake May. Drake obviously has been a godsend, I think, offensively, and he's putting up pretty good stats with the very limited overall talent around him. I was at the game this year against the Colts where the Patriots came within 1 point away from winning the game. It was the game where the Pats had the lead pretty much right to the end. It was 24-17, and they just had to have a defensive stop series against the Colts, and Anthony Richardson has had other plans, and basically took that team right down the field. They scored a touchdown on Richardson, touchdown pass to Alec Pierce, and then they went for two. A really ballsy call. So it basically was, if the Patriots stop them, they win the game. If they don't stop them, then the Colts win the game. Now, the Patriots did have a chance after Richardson got the 2-point conversion. He ran it in. The Patriots had a couple chances with a couple timeouts, and Joey Sly kicked a 66-yard field goal, which was a lot closer than I think a lot of people envisioned. But unfortunately, it was short in the Pats lost of that game. But Drake has really played well. Christian Gonzalez, of course, is one of their other best players. Those are really two of the future guys. But really outside of that, I mean, you maybe had a couple flashy guys here left and right. I mean, Kayshon Boutte was kind of Drake's go-to guy. Hunter Henry. Obviously, Mondre had his moments too. But there was a couple of guys on the defense that, guys like Kyle Duggar and Jonathan Jones and couple of guys in the secondary that I really thought that took some steps back this year. Not saying that they're bad players, but the defense was supposed to be one of their stronger suits, and unfortunately, it just wasn't the case. I do understand that the offense at times really wasn't giving the defense a lot in terms of rest, but it's defensively they've really struggled. Offensively, you're pretty much kind of getting what you're getting in terms of a rookie quarterback with a very young offense. But defensively, there was a bunch of, I think, of belief that they would be able to win some games in their defense. And unfortunately, a lot of this hasn't been the case. But they do have one more game this week, the Patriots do. I might as well just preview this right now. They play the 13-3 Buffalo Bills at Gillette Stadium. You're most likely than not going to see a bunch of regulars play for the Patriots. Right now, Drake May is questionable, so we'll see in terms of it. Drake will play the final game of the 2024-2025 Patriots regular season. If not Drake, my best guess would probably be a mixture of Jacoby Brissett and Joe Milton. I'd probably say Jacoby would play most of the game if Drake does not play. But I would expect a lot of the young kids, guys like Jalen Polk, who I think really was a disappointment, all things considered this year, just never really got into a rhythm of things after what looked like it was going to be a really promising draft pick this past year. And then Javon Baker, there's another guy. He just really never kind of got himself going. The two main rookies that the Patriots drafted last year in the class, they really thought really highly of these two guys, and unfortunately, they never got themselves really into a rhythm. Javon Baker just never was able to really find the field, and when he found the field, he just never really got the separation, and he just really wasn't, doing his thing out there. So it's really unfortunate, but I think in a game like this where the Patriots really are playing for pride at this point in time, maybe you can see those couple guys really trying to get some more playing time. Maybe, guys like Kendrick Bourne and, Kayshon Boutte, kind of the two main receivers they really have, if any, might not play as much. Hunter Henry, Austin Hooper, obviously the two main tight ends, have been fairly decent, I'd say, for the most part of the year. They probably maybe play a half or maybe three quarters. I don't know. Maybe they play the whole game. I'm not sure. But and then obviously Ramondre Stevenson and Gibson, the top two backs. They'll probably play a pretty good share of this game as well too. But the biggest thing about this game for the Patriots is if they lose this game, they are guaranteed the number one overall pick. If they win this game, they'll probably be in the top 5, top 7. So I understand a lot of people hate the tanking thing. I know, you never want to root for a loss for your team ever, and understandably so. That's what a fan does. You want to have your team win the game. Now the Bills. So the thing about this game too, right? The Bills obviously already clinched. So we'll talk about the NFL playoff picture down the road a little bit, but they're the 2 seed in the AFC. That's a little bit of a hint already. So they're basically right now are going to not play a lot of their starters, or I'd say most of this game. This game to them is basically going to be kind of treated like a preseason game where they're going to start Josh Allen at least for maybe a quarter or two, maybe play guys like, Keon Coleman and James Cook and Dawson Knox, Dalton Kincaid, a lot of their offensive starters maybe for a couple quarters. More likely than not, they'll probably be up, 21-7, 21-10, maybe by halftime or whatever. And then the second half might get a little bit of an interesting thing because you have Mitch Trubisky probably playing the second half. And they probably will bench a lot of their offensive guys. But to the Bills, this game doesn't mean anything, right? So, in terms of prediction, I'll get into my prediction a little bit. But, we'll talk about the Patriots draft in terms of who will be out there. But I'll just say this really quick. If the Patriots get the number one overall pick, they have so many avenues that they can take. They can go and get a massive haul. They could trade down and get a massive haul, get a couple first and second round picks, right? And maybe get a guy like throwing a name out there that would be an absolute dream of mine, right? A DK Metcalf from the Seahawks, like a guy that caliber, or Max Crosby, or I know a lot of the Giants are maybe trying to get a quarterback. Maybe trade with them, right? Maybe trade for like a Brian Burns or a Dexter Lawrence. Maybe a couple of guys, maybe defensively, right? Some pass rushing of like that caliber of like a trade, right? Who knows, right? But I know a lot of people are going to be on the Travis Hunter hype train. I definitely am for sure. But we'll talk about that in a little bit. I do want to obviously get into the picks here and obviously the matchups. But that's kind of really the Patriots season. There really has not been a lot of really high hopes. It's been a lot of down, to say the least, but it's a rebuilding team. I do think that they have a quarterback and they have a number one corner, and the rest of it is basically a lot of unknowns. The Patriots do, I think, have some things ahead of them that I think can maybe start to turn the tides a little bit. They obviously are, without a doubt, the biggest in terms of cap space this offseason when it comes to teams, so they can be able to spend a shit ton of money. In the NFL, you have to have a certain limit when it comes to spending. So the Patriots have no excuse to not get more talent out there, and obviously to figure out their coaching situation. I don't think that Jerod Mayo is going to get fired. I just don't see a scenario. I do feel like the Krause really like Jerod, and they want to give him an opportunity for at least the second year, and maybe to see if potentially there's a bunch of other situations where other coaches might get let go or whatever. But I don't see a situation where Jerod gets fired, at least in the second year, and then from there we'll have to see. So that's like my Patriots team report as of right now. And now we're going to get into the rest of the Week 18 slate, starting with 2 games that will be going on officially tomorrow. Tomorrow. And that's going to be 2 games. One of the matchups really does not mean a whole lot when it comes to playoff implications. But you have the Cleveland Browns going to take on the Baltimore Ravens at 4:30 on ESPN ABC. Right now, the Ravens are laying 20 points. That's one of the biggest lines, of course, of the whole entire NFL season. The Browns, they're a dumpster fire. They really had not been great for most of the year. Deshaun Watson obviously has been down for most of the year. They brought in Jameis Winston, who actually was pretty good for glimpses the last couple of weeks, but he was down. He's a little bit banged up, so they went to Dorian Finney Thompson, I think his name is, and he wasn't great. So they're bringing in a former Patriot to start this weekend, the Zappy guy, Bailey Zappy, the Zappy Fever, as we call it in Patriot land. Jokes aside, but yeah, he'll get the chance to play in the final game of that of their season against the Ravens. Now the Ravens right now, they're playing. I mean, right now they're obviously in the playoffs. They already clinched. But I think that the Ravens are pretty much going to play most of their starters. And if they even don't play their starters, the whole entire game, I don't really care, right? The Ravens are just a much better team. They're at home. I do understand that the Browns did play a little spoiler around their season. The Ravens were one of the hottest teams that went to Cleveland, and Cleveland ended up winning that game in an upset. So, of course, miracles can happen. Cleveland has a pretty solid defense. So, I do think with that line, that number, that 20 points that the Ravens are laying, I do think that the Browns can cover that. If it was like 14, 15 points, I do think that the Ravens would win outright. But I think that the Browns are going to take the points. However, the Ravens are going to win. I'll probably say like 31, 15, 14, something like that. The Ravens just score at will a lot. Lamar Jackson obviously has been playing at an MVP type level. Not surprising by one of the best quarterbacks in the league. And they just have so many ways that they can beat you, through the pass, the running game. And they force turnovers as well, too. So that's, of course, another bonus as well. So, yeah, I got the Ravens winning that game and the first one against the Cleveland Browns. The nightcap is going to be really fun. You got an AFC North showdown, also on ESPN and ABC. The Cincinnati Bengals are going to Pittsburgh to take on the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, the Bengals, they have to win to have any type of hope at one of the last seeds in the AFC. So they basically have to win, and they got to get some help. They need to have the Dolphins lose, and they need to have the Broncos lose. But the first order of business for the Bengals is they have to win, and they're taking on a really good Pittsburgh team. I know that Pittsburgh, though, to be fair, has been kind of slacking and sliding a little bit. After a really good start, I'd say, for most of the season, they've lost a couple games here recently. I do know, though, that their last loss that they do have was against one of the best teams in the league, and that's the Chiefs. So, maybe that the Steelers have some, time to kind of regroup and bounce back. They haven't played since Christmas, too. So, that's obviously maybe a bonus for them. Right now, the Bengals are laying 2.5. After what looked like was going to be a really disappointing year for the Bengals, and it still is kind of given to their standards, but Joe Burrow has been absolutely phenomenal all year. The problem really for the Bengals really has been their injuries, their defense, and their coaching, Zach Taylor. That's been really the biggest problem for the Bengals really all year, and they still have a way to potentially get into the playoffs because they've been able to find ways to win games the last couple of weeks that they really weren't able to find to win games, and a lot of their games are on the season, right? Their offense obviously was playing great, but their defense would let them down. Their coaching would let them down, and they're timely mistakes. And now they're finding ways to win a lot of the games that they're close in. Of course, their game that they had against Denver, they had to win, and they found a way to win in overtime. So, with that being said, I think the Bengals are going to win this game. It's a 2.5 point spread. It's at Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh went to Cincy earlier on in the year, and they won. So I think they return the favor tomorrow night. And I just really like the way that Cincy's been playing. Jamar Chase and T. Higgins have been playing outstanding. Higgins obviously had 3 touchdowns last week. Chase Brown is going to be able to play in this one too. He got hurt last week, so that's of course big. That more likely than not they'll have him back. So that should be a really good game. That out of the 2 games, of course, that's going to have a lot more, I'd say, juice to that one. To be honest, so we'll see what happens there. But I do have the Bengals winning that one. So the 2 games in the Saturday slate. In week 18, I got the Ravens and I got the Bengals. All right, let's go to the January 5th week 18 slate here. So we have, let's see, a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Hold on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 1 o'clock games. We're going to start with the Carolina Panthers taking on the Atlanta Falcons. Now, the Falcons have to win, and they need the Bucs to lose to claim the NFC South division title. So they obviously have something to play for. The Bucs, of course, if they lose and the Falcons win, because the Falcons beat the Bucs twice during the regular season, so they would have the basically the rights to basically win that division. So the Falcons are 7.5-point favorites. They're at home. And the Panthers I know the Panthers, of course, the second half of the season, they've been a lot more competitive, which I give them a lot of credit for. Bryce Young has really played great football in the second half. But it's all about consistency. They're still a really young team. I actually saw them play at Tampa. I saw them play at Tampa Bay last week at Tampa Bay when I was on vacation. And yeah, the Panthers they did not look good at all. I know that they had a really promising start to the game. They tied the game after the Bucs went on that first drive, and they got a touchdown by Mike Evans, and then they went right back. The Panthers did and scored a touchdown from Bryce Young to Adam Thielen, and Thielen had another touchdown at the end of the first half. So they had some moments, but Chuba Hubbard obviously has been a massive part of their offense. He's of course now down for the rest of the year. And that's just still a really young team. And I think that, the Falcons really played the Commanders tough last week. I'm going to go with the Falcons here. And I think that they push the Buccaneers that they have to win, for the division. The Commanders will be playing at Dallas against the Cowboys. Right now, Washington's laying 6.5. I'm going with the Commanders here. I just think that they're the better team. The Cowboys really have not been really playing for anything at this point in time. And one of their main guys offensively is now down for the rest of the year in CeeDee Lamb. So, you take away CeeDee Lamb, you're just not the same team. Of course, that really affected Cooper Rush last week. They only scored 7 points at Philly. So I'm going to go with Commanders here against the Cowboys. All right, you got the Chicago Bears going to Lambeau Field to take on the Packers. Packers, of course, have been a really good team all year. It sounds like from Matt LaFleur that the Packers are going to be starting a lot of their starters. Packers are now laying 10 at their place, and the Bears are just they're the Bears. They've been awful. They've been, no pun intended, as I said to my podcast group yesterday, they've been embarrassing. So it sucks for the Bears. They really have a lot of great fans. And the Patriots, one of their only wins that they had all year was against the Bears. So that pretty much says it all. But I think the Packers are going to win this game, whether they play their starters fully or not. Packers are just a much better team. I know Christian Watson's out for the Packers, one of their star receivers, but they're going to win this game. It's just a matter of how much. All right, you got the Houston Texans going to Tennessee to take on the Titans. Now, this is kind of a weird line. They have the Titans as a favorite, 1.5. But it looks like the Texans from D'Amico Ryans, looks like they're going to play their starters. And the Titans, I think, are going to be playing both of their quarterbacks, which I don't really understand. Will Levis has not been great at all. And Mason Rudolph has played fine. But the Titans they're a dumpster fire. So I think that the Texans are going to win. I think the Texans are going to win this game. So I have an upset outright. And I think the Texans are probably going to win, probably within 10 points, 10, 15 points. I just think they're a better team. So I'm going to go Texans there. Mac Jones and the Jaguars. We're going to take on Joe Flacco and the Colts. This is really not of a juice of a game. This game really means nothing to either team, but I'm going to go with the Colts in that one. You got the Buffalo Bills at the Pats, like I talked about earlier on. The Bills, of course, are going to be playing their starters for, I would say, about a half. And the Pats, we'll see in terms of if Drake May plays or not. But regardless if Drake May plays or not and how much the Bills play their starters, I still think the Bills are going to win. I think it'll be close, especially if, the Bills play a lot of their backups. But I do think a lot of their backups are better than what the Patriots have. I think I can see it being 21-17 Buffalo. I think it's going to be kind of like that, where you're going to see some turnovers, see a decent amount of defense. I think the Patriots can play a lot better defensively for sure than they did last week. But I do think last week, Justin Herbert, really good quarterback, and they just absolutely torched them. I just don't see the Patriots defense just getting torched like that again, especially if it's the last week of the season. They got their fans at home. They don't want to see their fans booing them once again. So I think that the Pats will play. They'll play hard, but I think the Buffalo will win that one. All right, the Giants will be taking on the Eagles. Jalen Hurts will be out in this game, and Kenny Pickett will be questionable. So it looks like more likely than not that Tanner McKee, who did come in last week against the Dallas Cowboys, who played pretty well. He had a couple actually touchdown passes. I know the game was more out of reach, but and Saquon Barkley will be out. So I know that, of course, a lot of Giant fans, a lot of Eagle fans wanted to see kind of the Saquon against the Giants part 2. Of course, he played really well over at MetLife early on the season, but it doesn't look like that he's going to play against the Giants this Sunday. Right now, Philly's laying around 2.5. I'm going to go with the Eagles. I just think that they're a better team. The Giants, I know that they won last week, but I don't know. I mean, Neighbors, of course, is good. Tyron Tracy is good. But can they put it consistently? I don't see it. All right, you got the Saints at the Bucks. The Bucks, of course, they win, and the Falcons lose. I think that's how it is. Bucks are in. The Saints, they're just a show themselves at this point in time. They're awful. I know they fired Dennis Allen throughout the year. They just got absolutely whipped by the Raiders, and the Raiders have been awful. They're on a 16-game losing streak until they won the last 2 weeks. So that basically says everything you know about the Saints. Alvin Kamara, one of the best offensive playmakers, done for the year. Chris Olave is questionable. And Spencer Rattler, no offense to Spencer Rattler, but the Bucks are just the better team. Baker Mayfield, saw him play in person last week. Baker all year and all last year. Baker really found his home, truly, in Tampa Bay. He has just been absolutely incredible. Obviously, Mike Evans. Mike needs around 130 yards, 200 yards right around there, receiving for this weekend to keep his 1,000-yard streak alive when it comes to receiving yards. Mike, I think, was right around, it started in 2014, 2015, and he's on like a 10 straight year of 1,000 yards. So I wouldn't put it past Mike. He's one of the best receivers in the game. Well, I got Tampa's lane 14. I'm going with Tampa. I think that they crush them, especially the way they looked last week against the Panthers. I think the Panthers are a better team than the Saints, and the Saints just can't score consistently. So I think it's going to be like 27-10. I think the Bucks are gonna crush them. So I got Tampa in that one. The Chiefs are going to Denver to take on the Broncos. Now, you don't see this very often, but you see here that the Chiefs aren't favored in a game for once. And it's not because that the Chiefs are a bad team. They are a very good team. They got the number 1 seed for a reason, but they got nothing to play for. So they're basically treating it as a preseason game for them. Carson Wentz is going to be starting. Guys like Xavier Worthy, Travis Kelce, Isaiah Pacheco, Patrick Mahomes, Chris Jones. A lot of their star guys are going to be out for this game. Basically resting up for 2 weeks now, essentially, because they're going to have the bye week until the divisional round for the Chiefs. So they're going to play Denver. Now, Denver, if they win and they get some help, they'll be in the playoffs. So for Denver, I mean, this could be potentially a freebie of a game where they're playing a lot of the Chiefs backups. The Chiefs typically have Denver's number, but it's almost like if Denver can't win against Chiefs backups, they just one, they could never beat the Chiefs, and two, they don't deserve to make the playoffs if they lose to this team. Now the Denver now is laying 10.5. I think that's kind of a big number because I do think that the Chiefs are going to be close in this one. I don't think that just because the Chiefs have their backups, they're going to be playing a bad game. I just don't see them winning this game. I think Denver, they're going to Denver. Denver knows they really need this game. So I think that Denver will win. I think that 10.5 is too much, but I do think that, that 10.5 is too much. I think that Denver will still win, probably like 7 points. All right, the Chargers are going to take on the Vegas Raiders right now. The Chargers are laying 4. The Raiders are they're dumpster fire. They have not been good a lot of this year. I think Antonio Pierce is probably going to get fired. After this year is done. I know that, of course, he's won the last couple of games, and it's a good thing for that overall team. But, the Chargers have, of course, been a really good team. They actually just steamrolled my pass last week. Give a lot of credit to Jim Harbaugh for the work he's done for this Chargers team after they fired Brandon Staley last year. Harbaugh comes in, really brings a new culture to the team. Keenan Allen, of course, left them, and they haven't lost a beat. Their running game, of course, has been good with J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards, and their outside guys. Lyle McConkey, of course, is a stud. I really wish the Patriots drafted him, but that's another story for another day. They got Josh Palmer. They got Will Dissly. They just got a bunch of guys that make plays, and it's a team that I would not want to face come playoff time. They just really good team. They got a really good defense. So I think the Chargers are going to win this game. I think that the starters will still play because the Chargers did just clinch the playoffs last week, but I do think they'll come down to the seeding specifically. So I do think they're going to be playing still for something. And I think they're going to win that one. Now, the Seahawks and the Rams, this game means no juice for either team. The Seahawks have kind of had a disappointing year. I did feel like they could have been a playoff team, but they've just been so inconsistent. Home record this year was not great to them, wasn't friendly to them. They had a couple of games that they should have won, including a game early in the season against the Giants, I remember. The Rams, the first time they played the Rams, they had that game too, and they let that slip on them away. So they've had a bunch of opportunities. I feel like the Seahawks have had after a really good start to the year, but it's kind of like the Saints, right? They really weren't as good as what they really were showing. So they were due for kind of the water finding its level overall with the team. And they weren't able to be consistent, I'd say, that halfway point to the end of the year. So they're basically on the outside looking in. The Rams, I think, are going to still be I don't know if the Rams can be a playoff team, but they're basically right there. I think they will be a playoff team because they're resting Matt Stafford for this last week. So I do think they'll be a playoff team. And Jimmy Garoppolo will be playing this one. Right now, Seattle's laying 6.5. I just kind of basically throw an overall guess at who I think is going to win. I know a lot of people will probably go with Seattle because they're playing a lot of the starters, and they're a lot better of a team with the starters than the Rams really are with Jimmy Garoppolo at the helm. But screw it. I think that the Rams are going to win this one. Something just told me that the Rams are going to win that one. So we'll see what happens. All right, you got the Miami Dolphins taking on the New York Jets at 425. We're obviously now getting into the 425 slates. Right now, Miami's laying just 1. This could be potentially – I know that the Jets have had a really tough year, kind of given their massive expectations. Aaron Rodgers the last couple of years. And it just has been an absolute nightmare, disaster of a season for the New York Jets. Top to bottom, of course, they brought in Devontae Adams mid part of the year. They fired Robert Saleh early on in the season. Jeff Ulbrich has been there, but it's just been really a season to forget for the New York Jet fans. They've had so many seasons of just misery and pain for the Jets. And so, but when you have a season with a guy like Aaron Rodgers, just the expectations that the Jets fans have, all that talent in the world, basically just for it to pretty much be shit when it's all said and done. It's just really tough to see if you're a Jet fan out there. But, the Dolphins right now, it doesn't look like Tua's going to play. He didn't play last week. He's out for this game on Sunday. So it looks like Tyler Huntley is going to be playing again. And I don't know. I mean, the Dolphins won last week against the Browns. The Browns are just not a good team at all. But I do feel like the Jets are a team that, at least the last couple of weeks, you just never know about. Like, I feel like that they can play spoiler in a game like this. I really do. And the line's only one. So basically that tells me it's a pick 'em of a game with two teams. I mean, if Miami wins and they get some help, they could potentially be in the playoffs. But I don't trust Miami regardless if they're – it's funny enough because I don't trust Miami if they're going to get in the playoffs, going to be a playoff team or not, if they're going to get in, because 201, right? If he's bound injury, that's of course one thing. Unfortunately, hopefully 2 is okay. But 2, even when the Dolphins get into the playoffs, their biggest Achilles heel is when the temperatures get colder. I think there's a stat out there that Mike McDaniel has a below 500 record against teams at really cold climates. He's not good against, and just the teams with records over 500 consistent with Mike McDaniel in the playoffs have just not been friendly. So I'm not saying for the Dolphins not to get into the playoffs or not have a chance to. I just don't think that, regardless if they get in or not, they're going to go anywhere when it's all said and done. But we'll see, if they play for something, that they try to find their way to get into the dance. Because when you get into the dance, as they say in the sports, anything could happen. But I do think that Aaron Rodgers, I think, potentially could play his last game as a New York Jet. I don't know if he'll be in terms of his whole entire career, but as a New York Jet, I think you could definitely see this being his last game. So I do think that he goes out with a bang. And I actually have the Jets pulling off of a 1-point underdog upset in this one. I think that they find a way. I think it'll be a really close game. I think it'll be like 21-17, 23-17. I think Aaron Rodgers throws for a couple of touchdowns, including one to Devontae and I think one to Garrett Wilson. He might throw a pick, I'm not sure. But I do think Tyler Huntley will find a way to turn the ball over a couple times. I don't know if it'll be a fumble. I feel like the Jets will find a way to play with some pride in this last week, and kind of do what the Giants did to the Colts last week, where the Giants put up 40+. That was their first win at MetLife Stadium for the whole entire season. I feel like the Jets and the Giants really win out home these days. So there could be potentially opportunity where you have back-to-back weeks of the remainder of the regular season. Of course, it would figure with the New York teams that they play with some pride and they give a show out to their fans when really their team's out of it. Right. So I think that they're going to play for spoiler, and I got the Jets to win this one. All right, in the final game of the 425 slide, you got the San Francisco 49ers at the Arizona Cardinals. You actually got a former Cardinal quarterback in Josh Dobbs, a backup. He's going to be playing out for the 49ers starting for this one because Brock Purdy is, again, unfortunately hurt. They don't have Deebo Samuel. I don't know if George Kittle, but it's kind of the whole story of the Niners season. They just never consistently were able to stay on the field. I didn't think they were a bad team whatsoever, but it's really just came down to their injuries that always just kept them from kind of getting to that next level of really where they wanted to be. Christian McCaffrey. I don't know if McCaffrey, as great as I love Christian, if he's ever going to be the same guy when it comes to just consistency and just being able to stay onto the field. And it's tough to say because you just never want to see anybody get hurt. But you also have to see kind of like the track record of like the last couple of years. It just has never been a guy that you can trust to be able to stay on the field. It's just simple as that. And I'm not calling him Mr. Glass per se because I don't think that's the right thing to say, but I just think that he just can't stay on the field maybe like he was before. And maybe if you're the Niners to maybe kind of consider drafting potentially running. I mean, the Niners have done a pretty good job at drafting some running backs. I know a guy like Jordan Mason came in and he played really well in Christian's absence, but McCaffrey being healthy just changed everything for that team. And I know Brandon Ayuk was out for most of the season, so he of course was another big time weapon. Deebo Samuel, I felt like kind of took a step back, and I wouldn't be shocked by any words if Deebo Samuel got traded this offseason by the Niners. I really wouldn't. I think that, they're going to have some tough choices. And I think that Deebo is definitely kind of coming, I want to say at his last leg here. I do think that there's still a lot of good football in Deebo, but I think that he might be like a cap casualty in terms of like a trade piece where the Niners could be able to trade him, eat up some of that money, and maybe get a decent return back for a guy like him. So we'll have to see about that. But yeah, they'll be taking on the Cardinals. The Cardinals have been a really disappointing story because they really, I thought, for the most of the year had a lot of great run in them. Guys like Kyler and James Conner, Marvin Harrison Jr., Trey McBride was absolutely a baller as a tight end this year. I really love McBride. And their defense, I thought, played really well, at least the last couple weeks. But really, their Achilles heel and the biggest thing was, I know the Panthers, of course, been playing really hard the last few weeks, but the Panthers found a way to basically spoil any type of playoff hope for the Arizona Cardinals, and that's basically where they are now. However, I will say, given the injuries that the Niners have and them playing Josh Dobbs, no offense to Josh Dobbs, but I would, I guess, rather take a healthy Cardinals team over a very injury-riddled 49ers team that doesn't have a lot of their starters playing. So I'll go with the Cardinals here to win that game. All right, in the last game of the Week 18 slate and the last game of the NFL season, could have not have been more of a better matchup that we have for Sunday Night Football. And I really, really want to congratulate the NFL for scheduling this game at this specific time, because the NFL has made so many boneheaded when it comes to scheduling situations in the past. And, if you had this game, this is, by the way, the Vikings at the Lions. If you had this game for, I don't know, the Saturday slate, yeah, it would have been paid attention to. But, it's almost like, could you be able to put into the Sunday slate and maybe put it as like a 4:25 game, which I think would have been fine if you put it as a primetime game. But you kind of just see this overall slate. And there's a lot of these games, at least you see in the Saturday slate and the early 1 o'clock and 4:25, where there's just a lot of the positioning teams are already in, right? Of course, there's a couple that still need to get in. But this game here comes down to two of the best teams in the league, just in general. Not just the NFC, but just in general. Two of the best offenses in the league, two of the best defenses in the league. You got, coaching. You got Kevin O'Connell against Dan Campbell. You got Sam Darnold's resurrected his career over Minnesota against Jared Goff, who's played absolutely excellent football this year for the Lions. You got Aaron Jones. You got Jahmyr Gibbs. I know Montgomery's hurt, but Gibbs has been, of course, fantastic. You got Justin Jefferson. You got Monroe St. Brown. You got T.J. Hawkinson. You got Sam Laporta. You just got everywhere, specifically dynamic players left and right. So I think we could definitely see a high-scoring type of affair. Of course, it really, early on in the season when Detroit went to Minnesota, the hype definitely stood to the test, to say the least. The Lions were able to pull away and win on a game-winning field goal in that one. And right now the Lions are at 2.5. They're at home. The tickets right now going for this game, I'm looking just this overall slate on ESPN right now, and they're almost $400. They're $360 right now, but that basically says everything when it comes to this overall matchup. I don't know. I picked yesterday in my picks league for my podcast. Shout out to Empty the Bench. Make sure to follow that Empty the Bench Network on YouTube and everywhere you can find your platforms. And you could watch the Football Forecast show, which you just put on earlier today. So if you want to kind of see my stuff there, by all means, go ahead. But I put the Vikings as my winner in that one over the Lions. I think it's going to be a high-scoring type of a game. But the Vikings just had a really big time win against the Packers last week. And the biggest thing with the Lions, as great as they have been, unfortunately, they're being kind of injury-riddled right now defensively. Of course, mid part of the season, Aiden Hutchinson, probably the most prolific defensive player on their team and one of the best defensive players in the league. is out for the remainder of the year, which was really took a massive hit to their team. And then a couple of their starting inside linebackers were down. Some of their inside pass rusher, I think, as well too. So the Lions have really the last couple of weeks defensively have really struggled, but it's not been their whole entire fault. It's just been they just had a bunch of their backups in. But the biggest thing about the Lions is they're just finding ways to win, whether it's guys are down, whether it's they struggle this and that. I mean, basically all you have to say is Jared Goff threw for 5 interceptions in a game against the Houston Texans mid part of this season. They were down by, I don't know, 2 scores in that game, and they found a way to come back. And I know it was a massive choke job by the Texans, but, the Lions were finding a way to win that game. So they could survive the 5 interception game by Jared Goff. They can really win any game. That's why I think the Lions have been not only one of the best teams in the league, but one of the best storylines after making the playoffs for the first time in forever. I felt like last year, got into the dance. They had a massive lead, and the NFC title game, of course, they blew it away against the Niners. But you knew for a fact that this Lions team is going to keep on trajectory towards a great pace with what they have and their culture and stuff like that. So, they're playing just great football. They've had a great season. But the Vikings have also had a great season. I don't think a lot of people expected the Minnesota Vikings to have the greatest season as they really were, to be honest. I mean, for me, I didn't expect this, to say the least. I thought maybe they might be a wildcard team at best, potentially, and they had a really good start to the year, but I was kind of feeling like maybe the Vikings might just kind of start in the downhill. Nope, never happened. Brian Flores has been absolutely fantastic for the defensive coordinator. Kevin O'Connell is, of course, a great coach, but a great OC. Obviously, Jettis is one of the best receivers in the league, but Jordan Addison, his counterpart, has been really good. And Sam Darnold has just been fantastic. He's absolutely just lighting it up. But really quick when it comes to predictions, I got the Vikings here. But like I said yesterday, my picks, like I said, basically anything could really happen this one. I could really kind of see it go either way. So we'll see what that. But yes, that is the Week 18 slate. Hopefully we have a really good finish to this regular season. And then next week, and I'll talk more about it on my program next week, we got the first round of the playoffs in the NFL. I cannot wait. Playoffs, of course, are a great time of year. And, yeah, it should be a lot of fun. Really quick, before we get into, I think, the NBA, we're going to talk some NBA, I think, tonight. The NFL had some coaching situations already. We're going to kind of talk about some guys right now, I guess, when we have some time, with some teams, on the hot seat, because, right, when it comes to the end of the regular season, you have a specific day, the Monday right after the regular season, you have what it's called Black Monday, and that's basically a lot of the coaching staffs around the league basically get evaluated by their ownership. And for the coaches that really have had a really tough year, or they're pretty much kind of on the trajectory of just not being able to survive, that's potentially when they get fired. So here are some guys that could potentially be on the hot seat, right? We had a bunch of coaches at least already throughout the year that, or of course, they didn't survive. Of course, the first one was Robert Saleh with the Jets. He got fired in October. The Saints got let go of Dennis Allen in November, and then Matt Eberflus right after that Thanksgiving fiasco that, of course, that he had the day right after that, he got fired. So, that's, of course, 3 of the kind of the start of potentially what's to come. And here's some of the other ones. This is kind of coming from an article on the CBS Sports. And the first one is Mike McCarthy from the Cowboys. I think this one pretty much is overdue. I mean, McCarthy, I thought last year, after the year that they had at the end of last year, I thought he was going to get fired then. Jerry Jones is just absolutely just sick in the head. And, he just, when it comes to decision making, Jerry Jones is just absolutely, he doesn't really know what's going on, right? So they kept McCarthy for another year, and it never worked out. So he's gonna miss the playoffs, and he's a disaster. I think they have to let him go. Now this one's kind of interesting. Shane Steichen from the Colts. The Colts are gonna miss the playoffs, but I think that they keep him around. I think the problem with the Colts though this year was they just Richardson and Flacco. I don't know in terms of their long term. I think that Richardson has a lot of raw ability, and I think that he could be a really good quarterback down the road. But the Colts just they don't really have that true. I mean, Jonathan Taylor, of course, is a great running back. He's a game changer. But Michael Pittman's a really good receiver as well too. But the Colts are just they're a weird team. Very inconsistent. Record with the Colts is Shane Steichen. He's 16-17, so he's right under 500. I think that the Colts, they're kind of an outside looking in type of team. They could be a playoff team. They might not be a playoff team. It's very just inconsistent every year with that team. So, but I do think that he has the right to come back. So I think that he stays. One sec here. The next one that I saw was Antonio Pierce from the Raiders. Now, this one I think, mid part of the season for the Raiders, Antonio Pierce, when they went to take on the Kansas City Chiefs at Arrowhead, he basically said in his press conference leading up to that game, basically saying that they were one of the worst teams in football, right? They were on a 16-game losing streak, and of course, that was one of their games that they had that was on the streak. And it looks like we have a surprise guest from my co-host, Isaiah Leon. Isaiah, welcome. Happy New Year, my friend. It's been a long time since we've had a conversation, so I hope you're doing well. We already actually went through the Week 18 slate of games before you came on, and now we're talking about NFL coaching carousel. So I'm basically kind of talking about that. But before I continue with that, how are you doing, my friend? Happy New Year. I know that you're now getting to Mr. Hockey, which I'm very happy for you about. I see a lot of that stuff that you're posting, so we might get into some hockey tonight. Who knows? But definitely in the NFL stuff, of course, that's kind of one of the main topics we'll get into. So that's why I'm leaning off that right now. But really quickly, how are you doing, my friend?
Hey, Ben, I'm good, man. I'm just checking in from work. I get off in a little bit, so I just decided to hop in real quick before I have to punch out. But Happy New Year to you and everybody out there that is watching, man. I know we haven't done a show in forever, so it's great to kind of get back into the flow of things. Definitely excited for the NFL season or the NFL, the NFL Week 18 and also the playoffs as well. The coaching carousel is going to be very fascinating. I know there's one thing that we haven't talked about, and I don't think we even talked about it because we haven't had a show in a while, is Bill Belichick, your former coach, headed to not the NFL, but UNC. I mean, that still blows my mind, to be honest. And, there's been a lot of stuff, college football wise. Notre Dame shocking everybody yesterday, beating Georgia, Oregon, getting just their butts kicked by Ohio State. There's been a lot of crazy stuff in sports. And, speaking of hockey, I am getting into hockey because, well, first of all, it's because the tickets for the Sharks are super cheap. Mm-hmm. It's like $15 and with fees included. So, and the stadium, quite literally is about 40 minutes from where I work. So after I work, I get off. I'm just I look at the Game Time app, and then I'm just man, the tickets are so cheap. I might as well, go there, relax, chill, and see Macklin Celebrini play. And I actually did get some pictures with Macklin Celebrini and Will Smith, William Eklund. Got that picture with the Coach Warsofsky, prior to the NHL draft, which I hope the coach does not see some of the stuff that I've been posting on Facebook, because I have been kind of critical of the coach, saying that he should be one and done and he should be fired. It's been cool. I mean, getting to meet the players. I got Macklin Celebrini's autograph, which is amazing. yeah, never ever thought I would get it. But for all those people that are watching, if you guys have a team in the NHL that is near you, if the Sharks come, I strongly suggest you guys to go to a Sharks game against one of your teams, because I think that like this kid, Celebrini's amazing. I mean, I didn't really know hockey prior to this season. Never really watched him play outside of maybe like one game that was just randomly on my television screen. And he is just like, he blows me away like every single game. Like he's just so fun to watch and very skillful. And he's just been amazing.
Yeah, no, it's awesome to see. I think the Sharks. I mean, you look at the Bay Area of teams. You got the Warriors, the Giants, even the A's. Like the Sharks really just never kind of had the media spotlight. And I know unless you're a hockey fan out there, I don't think a lot of people really knew the name Macklin Celebrini, of course, unless they kind of knew it from the NHL draft. And he's really just blossomed onto the scene. I know I haven't really been following the Sharks consistently because I'm not a Sharks fan. But their games are 10 a night, and I don't really feel like I can watch them consistently when they're at 10 a night around over here. But when I get the chance to watch them, I think it's pretty cool. And I did talk to you off air. The Sharks will be playing on Martin Luther King Day in Boston at the Bruins. I'm actually off work that day, so I'm really contemplating potentially going to that game potentially. I'll let you know. But let's get into the NFL coaching carousel while we continue this conversation, while we at least have you, Isaiah. And I went through a bunch of coaches at least already before he came on. And on CBS Sports, there's a couple names that kind of floated around. I know I kind of talked about earlier that Robert Saleh, who got fired earlier on during the year, Dennis Allen, and Matt Eberflus. Those are kind of three names that I felt like we had a pretty good idea that they were going to get fired. But a couple of the next ones I think that we can potentially see coming up on Black Monday, which is the day right after Week 18. Mike McCarthy, I think, is one of them. He was obviously one that I did think that should have been let go last year, and he never got let go. They have Shane Steichen. Their prediction on them on CBS Sports is saying that they keep him around, but I thought that was an interesting one that they kind of floated. Antonio Pierce, Gerard Mayo, Doug Peterson, and Kevin Stefanski. Oh, wow. Zach Taylor. A lot more than I thought. Brian Daboll. They say they have Kyle Shanahan, which I think would be absolutely ludicrous still. So, yeah. I mean, in terms of that list right now, right, I guess I'll make my overall predictions in terms of what I think will happen with all of them, and I can kind of go through some with you. But at least when you kind of looked at overall list, right, is there any other coach that you see out there that was not in that overall article that you might see that could be one that you could see potentially let go?
I mean, if you look at the list, it's kind of like obvious for a lot of these candidates. I mean, Doug Peterson, like he should. I thought he wasn't going to even make the season, let alone make it to Black Monday. Antonio Pierce, I never liked that hire to begin with. I think that Antonio Pierce was kind of living off that interim coach high, where the players feel like they let their they didn't play well for their old coach. They feel bad they got him fired, and then they are rejuvenated. Yeah, and then they play so much better under him. But now you look at it now, and he gets named the regular head coach, and then look, he stinks up the joint. And I know he hired a bunch of veteran coaches like Tom Coughlin, Marvin Lewis, I think is on the staff as an assistant head coach. But I don't think Antonio Pierce should have ever been the head coach. I think that you look at that division, right? Sean Payton, Andy Reid, Jim Harbaugh, you got three superstar coaches there, and you have Antonio Pierce. The Raiders need to hire a coach that can match up with some of that star power in that division. So I think Pierce will be gone. I think that especially with Tom Brady now being the owner, one of the owners of the Raiders, I think he wants to have his input on things there in Las Vegas. Brian Daboll, I think, I'm not surprised with that because the Giants have just fallen off a cliff ever since they went to the playoffs back in, I think, 2022.
Drew Lock. When I was
shout out Drew Lock. I mean,
when I was at the Panthers Buccaneers game on vacation last week on Sunday, I really didn't check my phone. I saw at Raymond James Stadium, they of course have the scoreboard with a bunch of the games and stuff. So I kept on kind of looking left and right at times, and it said the Giants were ahead, but I'm like, there's no way they're going to keep this up. And right after the game was over, because it started raining a bit, so my brother and I actually left after the third quarter. The Bucks were absolutely crushing them, so we didn't stay for the end, and we had to catch an Uber. But I saw that on my phone that Drew Lock was continuing to go crazy, and I'm like, let's go, because the Giants had the number 1 overall pick. And I thought to myself, well, maybe the Patriots don't have to lose out. Maybe they just have to potentially maybe lose one more game to get the number 1 overall pick. But nope, Drew Lock had some other plans, and now the Giants have really helped us twice now. Last year was Tommy DeVito for us getting Drake May. Now this year you have Drew Lock being the savior, at least for us, for 1 week. So I guess that's maybe payback for the 2 Super Bowls they've beaten us for now. But I've been kind of, giving my Giant fans some shit about that. Now maybe we get some payback because, that was that. But I just thought that was really funny.
I mean, you know what's funny though, Ben, is that like the Giants have, even though they've won a couple of Super Bowls, they have now been lumped into the category of the Mets before this year, the Jets, and just and the Knicks before like they became good, like just sorry teams. I mean, literally, like you look at the Giants now, like literally anything that can go wrong will go wrong with the Giants, and a lot of the stuff happens in like funny fashion. I mean, they're the clear-cut favorite for the number 1 pick. They're on track for it. They've been losing I think 11 in a row. Like nobody expects them to win any of their final 2 games, and they literally get a out of this world performance from Drew Lock, who who had 4 touchdown passes and 1 rushing TD, 5 touchdowns total. He helped me win my fantasy matchup because I started Drew Lock. He scored 45 fantasy points. I mean, it was insane. Yeah. It was absolutely nuts. But I mean, Giant fans were pissed after that game. I mean, I looked at.
Did you see what Drew Lock said after the game too? He said, we don't care about the number 1 pick. So it made even more of a, oh no, like
people were like cursing out Drew Lock. People were cursing out Brian Dable. I know I went on
public enemy number 1 in New York, apparently, I guess. I don't know.
Right. Like I went on Twitter after the game and I saw I searched up Brian Dable and he gave a quote saying I'm so glad for our fans that we won. And then on the comments, if you scroll down, it's literally people giving Brian Dable the middle finger. Another person saying Brian Dable, you fat F throwing, MF. Like people were just going. Oh my God. It was insane. But yeah, I mean Dable, I think the Giants have to do something. You can't go 3-14 or whatever it is, 4-13 potentially, and not get rid of the coach. I mean, this has just been a really ugly season for the Giants. And then I think you look at the other one. Oh, Cowboys. Mike McCarthy, his contract is up. Yeah. I don't know how he's gonna how that's gonna end for the Cowboys. I think if I had to give one candidate potentially, that would be a surprise. I could see it is the Bills. If the Bills have a first round playoff exit, right? If they with this stacked team, if they have a first round playoff exit, they lose in the first round.
Definitely. Yeah.
I think that the Buffalo Bills they have to do something. You can't have this amazing season and then lose in the first round and then run it back. You just cannot. So I could see that.
I got another one too.
Yeah, go ahead.
I know that he's been a little bit better throughout this year, but I really still want to pass this team is the Philadelphia Eagles with Nick Sirianni. Because I know that there was a ton of smoke that happened last year in which they had a really good, first half of the season the Eagles did, and they really completely fell off the cliff. And I didn't even remember this, but I was watching a Giants podcast yesterday night before, and it was with they did an Eagle fan that joined, and she was saying that AJ Brown played in the last game, literally in a game that didn't mean anything, and he got hurt. And the week after, they had to go to Tampa Bay, and they got crushed. And Sirianni, I think a lot of scrutiny was going on with Sirianni. If the Eagles are one and done too, I think that Sirianni could potentially have some scrutiny in terms of, I want to say coaching getting fired right away, but I think that there'd be a lot of questions, at least for his long term.
Yeah, and this is the thing, Ben. Like, this is why Bill Belichick should have waited instead of taking a job at UNC because
Yeah,
I think he would have had options. I mean, I think
yeah. I know. I
Philadelphia
do
did.
too.
Yeah,
I
like
do too.
I think Philadelphia potentially could go one and done in the playoffs because if they are seated where they are right now, I think they're the 2 seed right now. They would play in the first round, I believe, against Tampa. I think, or no, not Tampa. I think it would be the Commanders, or it would either be the Commanders or Green Bay. I think that would be the team.
Mm.
If they play one of those two, like I'm not saying Green Bay would win. I'm not saying they would be the favorite, but I could see Green Bay giving Philly a big fight. And I could see,
Oh yeah, for sure.
yeah, like it's the same thing like last year. Nobody expected the Cowboys to get upset by the Packers, but if you actually looked at the matchup, like you would be like, wow, yeah, Green Bay definitely has a chance because they've got a strong passing attack.
Yeah,
Their
totally.
offensive line is very strong. They hold up very good. Like I could have seen that coming from a mile away. So definitely Sirianni is definitely another one that I could see if Philly definitely exits in the first round. And then I think out of the rest that we named, you know what? As I know he's a legend of that team, but if I'm the Patriots, I would fire Gerard Mayo, and not because he's not a good coach, but because of
Uh,
all the coaches that are available.
right.
Um, because right now you got Vrabel available, you've got Ben Johnson that is available. Like the Patriots, Gerard Mayo's a decent coach. I'm not gonna harp on him too much, but he's a decent coach. But when have we ever had like a Ben Johnson or a Vrabel or like some of these guys, like Vrabel potentially, like this guy
Yeah.
won Super Bowls with the Patriots. He's a legend in New England. Like if you're Robert Kraft, you have to at least think about bringing him in, or even Ben Johnson, who can work wonders with Drake May.
Right. Yeah, no, and I talked about a little bit with the Pats. I stay before he came on, but at least for right now, for me, I don't see Mayo getting fired. At least for upcoming to next year. I think they're basically gonna kind of do a trial and error, and I think they're going to basically do a lot more changes kind of around Mayo. Not Mayo still being around. Even though I want Vrabel for sure, I think that the crowd's just so keen in on having Mayo, and I think it would be just kind of a bad look, at least for their specific case, that they fire him after 1 year and a rebuild year. So I think that's that. Looks like we have somebody else here on the program. That dude 2020. I'm not sure specifically who this is, so I'm very curious to see who this is. Uh Isaiah looked like saying
This
that.
is your mom.
Who is this?
This is your mom. This is John.
What's up, John?
What's up, bro?
How are you? Happy New Year. I in terms of the name on there, I had no idea in terms of who it was. So
No, that's all good. It's just from when I first started podcasting when I was experimenting with names.
got it. So, John, great to have you on, my man. We're talking. Me and Isaiah were talking about the NFL coaching carousel. I know that, of course, there's been a ton of names that, of course, have been floating around. At least on Black Monday coming up. Is there any type of coaches out there, at least in your mind, that you think could be, around the hot seat and obviously moved on from, or, what do you think about that?
I would say Gerard Mayo, and I say this for one reason. This has nothing to do with the rebuild mode. We've seen plenty of head coach, especially this year. Did anyone really have any confidence in Dan Quinn being able to take the Commanders to the playoffs in his first year with not only a rookie quarterback, with a team that just got sold last year with a new owner because there was drama, everything that happened with the previous ownership, and so now new ownership, literally. First year head coach who struggled in Atlanta before he became the DC in Dallas,
Mm.
with no running game whatsoever. And I think New England has some pieces together. They have, I'm assuming, very similar players on defense. Obviously, the defensive production went down without Belichick, but their offense was still garbage.
Mhm.
I think it should at least be considered because, like Isaiah said, with Mike Vrabel, he knows what it's like to win and what it takes. And having the influence of some of the greats in Teddy Bruschi and Tom Brady and Belichick from his past, I think would be great. I understand it's a rebuild year, But let's say it's a rebuild year and he goes and he stays on the team. What happens when you have a similar type year? Then you're pretty much putting Drake May's career in developmental hell before it even starts. But last one, I would say, dude, that's a tough one. I would say Chicago.
Yeah.
It's not just about losing. We get that, but when you have a quarterback, even though the numbers and stuff isn't showing it, correct me if I'm wrong, Ben. Isn't Caleb Williams going to have a 4,000-yard season?
This year, that's actually a really good question. The biggest thing about Caleb, and I know that, of course, a lot of other good rookies in the class were fantastic. Of course, Drake and, Jaden Daniels, of course, is going to be probably there for Offensive Rookie of the Year. But Caleb, I know there's, of course, a lot of stuff that's out the field. I don't think that he's my favorite in the class, but I do think with, like a guy like a Ben Johnson, I think he's going to be a really hot commodity for them, is if maybe get more out of his overall potential. I do think that Caleb, at least in his first year, did a lot of things that he thought they could be able to translate from coming from college over to Chicago. And it just, with that bad offensive line too, it just really never worked out. But in terms of your question, what was it again? I'm sorry.
I would say Caleb Williams was going to be a 4,000-yard quarterback this year. But I could be wrong. But I do think Mike Vrabel was pretty close. Yeah. And so my last point is I think Mike Vrabel, if the head coach in Chicago gets fired, Mike Vrabel, I think, would be a great option, especially he knows the defensive side of the ball. I mean, he was able to get the most out of their guys because think about it, in Tennessee, where it's not acting like you had a prime Vince Young or you had a freaking McNair. This team was ass, and they still took them to almost the playoffs. And I think with that, maybe it could help, but I also think, to y'all's points too earlier, probably because I just not tuning and getting off of work, I don't think it matters who you put in as head coach. This is still Chicago, and you bring in Keenan Allen, a struggling veteran who's been injury prone. There's a reason why the Chargers traded him. And I think, like I said, Gerard Mayo probably, but I don't see them actually firing him.
No, I don't see them. I mean, as a Pats fan, would I like Mayo being gone? Of course, but I also think that, with the talent that they have around him right now, it was kind of an unfair situation that he kind of came into. But I do think that, the ownership, the Krause, my dad has really been harping on them for a while now in terms of, Robert's, of course, getting up there in age, and Jonathan, of course, I don't think it's going to take the realm, in terms of his dad's duties, but the talent is a massive thing for the Pats. They're, of course, number one right now in cap space, and the Austin, of course. I would love to, of course, take, from your team, your friend and T. Higgins.
Hey. No, sir. No.
Listen, I don't think that's happening, at least from kind of what I've been gathering. It looks like T, and he actually expressed this after the game last week, that he might take less to potentially stay with Cincy, because you guys right now have a great situation going right now. Of course, you have a long-term great quarterback, Joe Burrow. You're more likely than not going to pay Jamar Chase to what he was going to have for next year. So why wouldn't a guy like T. Higgins want to leave? A really good situation like that. But I kind of like a guy like that for a guy like for Drake May. I did talk about this for the past, a little bit in terms of the number one overall pick. Gerard Mayo, I kind of want to tie this at least to our conversation right now, but he said come into this game against the Bills, right, where the Pats lose, they're going to get the number one overall pick, but Mayo's just like, we're trying to win at least win this game, trying to play for some pride here. So, I mean, I think he knows for a fact that I want to say that his job's on the line, but I do think there's just so much of uncertainty, and I do really like the Mike Vrabel hire for sure. I do think that if they got the chance to get his hands on him, I think that it would be an incredible thing. I think for Drake too, it'd be awesome. But I wouldn't roll a team like the Jets for Mike Vrabel, unfortunately, because
Mike Vrabel, you stay away with a 10-foot pole. It's like if a girl is too attractive, she's talking to you and you don't know her. There's something going on. There's something. You do not take that job with the Jets. No.
Anything with New York sports and football is never good.
I guess they're the
Bills.
Definitely. But my final point, what you're saying about the talent, if you look at the Commanders, who do they really had outside of Terry McLaurin? And that's why I think there's at least some pressure for Gerard Mayo.
Mm.
I think he's a class guy. I'm sure he's a great guy. But at the end of the day, like, who they've had, Brian Robinson's had a decent career, but he had early on, he got obviously hurt. He was shot.
Austin Eckler,
But
but he's getting at the back end of his career now. So
So that's why I say that, because Drake May's y'all's guy. He's the future. I mean, the numbers aren't necessarily great, but I've seen in terms of outside the numbers, he's good. But
he basically, to me, really quick, John, he classifies
Sure.
himself as like a backyard football type of guy. Where I do
Mhm.
think that there's going to be a lot of mistakes, at least along the road, but the talent is there. His arm strength is absolutely phenomenal, and he's basically playing with a bunch of receivers that are pretty much number 3s and 4s for a lot of good teams. So I think that basically is a really good sign potentially of what's to come.
That's why if you don't have the confidence in Mayo, but you want to say, let's see how this works, I think you're pretty much putting the nail in the coffin for Drake May in New England. Because as you know, being around watching sports, it takes a while for an offense, especially with a young quarterback, to be on the same page. And if you don't think that Mayo's the guy, it's better to cut your losses now. Now, will they? Probably not.
Yeah, no, I agree because they ruined. I mean, as much as I did like Mac, I didn't think it was a long term, but they don't want to have a situation just like that in which you don't want to fail like the next guy. And I think that Drake has just so much great upside, in which you just don't want to have a situation like this all over again. And trying to get another quarterback again, find another guy, it's just never a good thing to have for sure. Just kind of going through that overall mess consistently is just never good. But we appreciate John. We appreciate you coming on. I think we're gonna actually get into some NBA. If you want to stay on, by all means, that's fine.
Sure, bro. I just got 30 minutes.
Yeah. So in the NBA world, and I know I haven't really talked NBA a lot on my program in a while, but I did feel like I would like to kind of get into that. And you're a Rocket fan, actually, correct?
I used to work for the Rockets. I did for a bit. Unfortunately, I'll just be straight out. Once COVID came back, the veterans got their job back. But I was thankful for the opportunity, and I hope maybe there'll be something there in the future. But I'm a Cavs fan. I have been for a while, but again, the Cavs make me look like Mr. Clean. To be honest, it's been a painful 6 years, 9 years, whatever how long it's been.
Yeah, no, but I mean, regardless, I mean, we could talk, or at least could start with your Cavs because the Cavs have been absolutely fantastic all year this year. They're 30-4. They're actually right in front of my Boston Celtics when it comes to the Eastern Conference. In terms of looking at the standings, there's a really, when it looks at the top 6 in the standings, you got the Cavs at number 1, you got the Celtics number 2, you got the Knicks at 3rd, the Magic at 4th, the Bucks at 5th, and the Heat at 6th. And we're going to talk about the Heat in a little bit because I think you might know about the Jimmy Butler stuff that's been going on recently. It's not been great.
Mm-hmm.
He pretty much wants a trade out, and we'll talk about that a little bit because there's some breaking news that happened earlier on tonight. But really quick, how do you feel about in terms of the Cavs start? It's really, I mean, 3-4. They brought in Kenny Atkinson this offseason. Guys like Darius Garland's really made that next leap. Evan Mobley has another great year, ahead of him. They're 17-1, John, at home. I mean, they've been absolutely incredible. They're averaging 122 points per game. They're 6-0 in the division. They're 9-1 in the last 10. It's, you look at a lot of the contenders around the league, the Cavs are really they're going to be there at the end. We were privileged enough to beat you guys in terms of the record, at least for the undefeated stretch, but you guys definitely for sure for real. So what do you think about your team right now?
I think it's great, and if this sounds like a negative Nelly, fine, but I'm looking at the bigger picture and it doesn't excite me as much maybe as it should because your Celtics are our kryptonite. And yes, there were some bad calls, but point is we lost. And until we can get past y'all, none of this matters to me because if we can't get past y'all and get the Larry O'Brien trophy, then going 30-4, none of that matters. It's like the Warriors going 73-9. Doesn't matter. You blew a 3-1 lead, and I think it's great. Um, I'm surprised Mitchell came back. I have no idea what was going on, but I mean, so far, yes, I'm obviously happy. But I'm curious to see what happens in the postseason here, if and when something does implode. Because I'll admit, Ben, when they hired him, I remember texting Rachel Hill, and I'm like, "What the heck is going on here? Like, like this is such a stupid hire." But I mean, I gotta give him credit. It's a great start here, and I definitely look forward to watching some more or watching some basketball here once the season is over here in a couple of weeks. Once football season is over in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, I think once the a lot of people say for the NBA season, kind of like in October, right? It's not really the peak of basketball. I know Christmas Day. I don't know if you got the chance to watch any of the Christmas Day games. I got the chance to watch a couple of them. I know, unfortunately, my Celtics lost to the Sixers, but a couple of the NBA games on Christmas were great. I know that this was kind of the first year in a while where you had the NBA and the NFL kind of overlap. So a lot of people were kind of curious about how that would work, but the NBA on Christmas this year is fantastic. So I think really kind of the start of the season for the NBA kind of on. Crazy enough that the NBA trade deadline is coming in next month. So I feel like really the NBA season is really kicking in. I agree with you. I think that once the playoffs for football are over, the Super Bowl, of course, ends. I think this is kind of really the next thing that'll kick in. But no, yeah, I agree with you. I mean, the Celtics really, I think, for the most part, have been the Cavs' kryptonite. But the Celtics are just such a deep team. That's not even me being biased, but I think that with the Cavs, they're also really deep too. They're getting really good production off the bench. I know Max Strus has not been as great as at least in the past. With JP Bickerstaff at the helm, but he's still been really fine. Guys like Sam Merrill, Jared Allen's been really good. So, you just kind of look at the overall conference, and I think you guys will definitely be there at the end, to say the least. And Kenny Atkinson, I mean, I can ask you about that. I mean, how do you feel about that overall hire? And I mean, at least so far, I mean, it's been pretty good.
So far, I say it's great, and maybe I'm trying not to be negative about something about sports, but it reminds me of Zach Taylor in Cincinnati, where you have these great starting five, this great starting core that may substitute for down the line what the coach may not do. And I hope I'm wrong. Um, I don't know. I just feel weird about him. I just come in. I trust the team without a doubt,
Mm.
but I don't know. I think he's doing a great job. Um, I don't know. Maybe I'm feeling off. Maybe something seems to be missing from him. But I mean, so far I gotta give him credit. I mean, I thought he was in obliteration. I thought he should have been coaching in an NBA 2K team, much less coaching a pro basketball team. You fell with
Mm.
LaMelo Ball, and he's not what he is in Charlotte. But I mean, gotta give him credit. And to your point about basketball, it's not me saying basketball. It's just for me. I'm a huge college football guy. Like my
Me
team's
too.
in the
And we
in the
could
playoffs.
we could talk a little bit about that too before we head out for sure. Because I
But
do want to talk about that for sure with you.
for sure, man.
Because I think
But yeah.
my Ohio State plays with Texas coming up next week.
Oh
So
shoot, bro! I forgot you're an Ohio State fan.
I
Well,
am. Yes. So, well, we
yeah,
could we could definitely talk a quick preview of that before we go. But yeah, I do think with Kenny Atkinson, I really did like the hire kind of coming in. He's had some. The good thing about Atkinson too, I mean, I'm kind of just looking at his overall tenure. He's been an assistant coach 3 times out of the 5. He was an assistant coach with the Knicks, the Hawks, and the Warriors. And he was a head coach, obviously outside of your Cavs now, but with the Nets for 4 years from 2016 to 2020. So he has experience both from the head coaching side and the assistant side. I think that's a really good trait to have, at least from a coaching perspective, to kind of have experience from both of that side. So it should be good. I mean, we'll kind of talk about, I think, more next week on my show. Just more basketball in general. But since you're on here for sure, and you're a Cavs fan. I want to get your overall insight on that. But let's really quickly, since like I said, we have you on here, let's go to the college football playoff. Because what a game that we just had between your Texas Longhorns and Arizona State. What is their mascot
Sun
again?
Devils,
Sun
I think.
Devils. Thank you. I completely drew a blank there. But But really quick before we get into the overall game, how have you really felt about the playoff format? Of course, I think a lot of people are very indifferent with it. But really quick, because I really haven't asked you, like, how do you feel about that?
Honestly, I was talking with a friend who he obviously works at Fox, and I think my thing is I love the 12-team format. And I know there's conversations about expanding it, and I think if you do, you're pretty much going to dilute the product to what I feel the NBA is to a certain extent, where you're adding all these mid-season these trophy for winning what in the first 20 games you have this little mini championship, and I'm like, why are we adding all these extra things if you're not going to let the product speak for itself? And I think the 12-team playoffs is great because it introduces more meaningful games in the regular season. Because now you're saying Bama faces off against a Vanderbilt, it's not going to be Bama wins 40-10 or Bama wins 40-3. You now have these opportunities to where recruiting is a lot more difficult, and that's great, right? Because it's not just going to be a Nick Saban, which is why he retired. Again, that's my genuine belief. Now teams could have more opportunities to win, right? And now let's say, oh, you have no chance in college football now because there's no 12-team playoffs or NIL. Then now you're screwed and pretty much on the fourth depth chart as fullback for the Crimson Tide. But no, now you're a starting receiver for Fresno State, whatever it may be. I think 12-team playoffs is great. It makes exciting games. I think anyone complaining to me is like, it's kind of one of those been like, like obviously you've covered like a lot of sports is I think no matter what you do, people are going to complain.
Right.
I think the 12-team playoffs is the semi-perfect spot, but if you expand it more, you're pretty much ruining the game and diluting that. My point is, if you increase more teams in the playoffs, recruiting doesn't matter. It really
Yeah,
doesn't, because now you're saying an Alabama team that, frankly, let's be honest, they didn't deserve to be in there, and thank God they didn't. You played like crap against Oklahoma. You went 13-26, touchdown pick and a fumble against Michigan. You lose against Vanderbilt. There's a third loss in there, and I don't like. I'm glad that you're not gonna have another team that is gonna play like garbage. But I think it's great so far. Um, Now, obviously, I have my opinion on the Texas game, but that's another thing. But I think 12-team playoffs is great. It's more football. I love it because
yeah,
I just love college football. To me, it separates itself from the NFL completely. Culture is a huge thing in college football.
yeah. And you pretty much said a lot of things, but really quickly too, what I really like is because in the past, a lot of the matchups have just been at neutral sites. And I know that, of course, you get a lot of primetime games, at least throughout the regular season, at like the home stadiums, but you never really get like that playoff. I mean, unless you're like having like a, an SEC, like a Georgia and, Tennessee or, kind of like a big time matchup, of course, it has a lot of stakes, but, this college football playoff, I feel like with a little bit of expansion, like for instance, right, a lot of the first round games were blowouts, but like you have the Notre Dame and Indiana game at South Bend. You never really had that like in the past of like a first round game and like right at specifically at a site of like the home campus. And I think that just is really cool to kind of have now is you kind of had that little bit of baseline in which at least in the past you had a lot of neutral site like stadiums, which is fun. But I just think that was just kind of like a new little change that they had to it, which I think really benefited, to say the least, because a lot of people be able to like watch from their campus. I know Notre Dame fans, they had like the terrible towel. It just kind of felt like an NFL playoff kind of atmosphere a little bit in this year's thing. I think I really like that kind of new change as well.
It was great, man, to have, and you understand as Ohio State fans, both of ours first home playoff game ever,
Yeah,
and that was awesome.
yeah,
Obviously, but that was really cool, and
yeah.
I hope we get to have more in the future.
Yeah, definitely for sure. All right, let's get into your, of course, the Texas road at least to where they are now. And they're gonna be taking on the Ohio State Buckeyes coming up on Friday. So of course Texas beat Clemson at Texas, at least in the first game. That was a pretty good game, at least for most of it. I mean, it went really back and forth. Klumnik, of course, kind of came back, but Texas, I think, really had the, possession and everything like that, pretty much from the start to the end. This second game, so I was listening to a bunch of it in the car because I was coming back from my vacation, and you guys were up by a decent amount in that game. I remember. I think it was in the second half it happened, and then when I came back to my house, Arizona tied on the 2-point conversion. The Arizona running back, the state running back, by the way, Cameron Scatabo, 30 carries, 143 yards, and 2 touchdowns. I mean, that guy is an absolute star. I didn't really know.
He also threw up in the middle of the game too, by the way.
Wow, I did not know about that, but yeah,
he
that
threw
guy's
up on
an
the sidelines and came back in.
That guy's an absolute warrior, on the field and off the field, and literally. But yeah, I mean, just the amount of lead changes that they had in that second half, and obviously Ewers 20 of 30, 322 yards, 3 touchdowns and pick. But of course, the biggest thing about Ewers is the balls that he had, in which fourth down they had to have it, and that all up blitz. I still remember about Arizona State. Ewers basically made a check at the line. He basically stood after the game, and that throw that he had to goal in at the back of the end zone to tie that game. Of course, on the next and the overtime on the next the second one on the next ensuing play, Ewers got the touchdown. Texas takes the lead, and then Arizona State gets a chance on that following possession, and the quarterback throws the pick, and that's that. But just an absolute whirlwind of a game. Arizona State got 16 points in that fourth quarter, so they really made it a game at the end. So I give them a lot of credit. After what it looked like was going to be another laugher, but how do you feel like about that overall game? But I bet your overall emotions going crazy left and right. But that's obviously what college football is all about. In terms of anybody that was saying everything was a blow, I mean, that kind of game kind of kicked everybody's ass, literally and figuratively as well. So, but give Arizona State a lot of credit. They were there for a reason. They played really well. But credit to your Texas Longhorns, man, and can't wait for a great overall game come Friday.
I will say a few things. Well, first of all, Ken Scatterbo is going to be a great player. And Zach Taylor, I hope you're listening, which you're obviously not. I would love to have him in Cincinnati. But I would say the biggest thing for me is the hypocritical part of the media. Yes, that was targeting for every stretch of the means. Yeah. But if memory serves, because I had to look this up because I was texting someone the other day. Arizona State had an illegal touchdown. Another player cannot force a player with the ball into the end zone for a touchdown. They did, and it wasn't called.
You're talking about the one. I think Scatabo had the second one. I think it was the lineman that brought him in. Is that the one you're talking about?
I believe so. Yeah. And there was a targeting on Isaiah Bond. Wasn't called. So all I'm saying is it goes both ways. You can't start complaining when it doesn't go your way.
Right. Can't have your
because if it doesn't go your way and you but I'm saying that if you also did the same thing. Obviously, I would be complaining if we didn't do it. But you also had targeting and the illegal touchdown. But I got to give this team credit. Ewers has incredibly stressed me out. But I think the fact that I talked about on my show is regardless of what the stats are at the end of the day, like I talked about with the home to the Chiefs, is as long as you have the win, that's absolutely what matters. Yes, Ewers made that interception that made me want to pull my hair.
Yeah.
But I will give him credit. He made the throw on 4th and 13. And I will tell you, Ben, I have not my toes have not been clenched like that since the 2006 Rose Bowl. Wow. And my first ever sports game to watch. And I'm like, oh my God, what is going to happen?
Yeah.
And thank Asa Golden, man. He is a phenomenal player. He's only a sophomore. And, of course, going into overtime. And I'm so bummed Gunnar Helms is senior. Boo. But that to me, it was just extremely exciting. And like you said, it really invokes what college football is about with these 12-team playoffs. I think you can say what you want about the Big 12. Cam Scatterbo is, to me, a phenomenal player. And for him to throw up on the sidelines from he said drinking too much water at once to coming back a few plays later, a passing touchdown, a running touchdown. I think he's a great player, and but Texas got the win, man. Dude, I'm telling you, if we can beat Ohio State this weekend, like with due respect to Ohio State, they're a great win. That was dominant.
Yeah.
It has been 19 years, my guy.
Wow.
19 years, but it was a great win, and I hate that I had to wait till next Friday for the next college football game.
Yeah, no, I mean, I guess for your heart it might be for the best, but yeah, no, we can't wait. It's gonna be a lot of fun. I don't know how you felt about the Rose Bowl game, but I'll kind of at least get into that. My Ohio State Buckeyes, of course, their first win was against Tennessee, and no offense to Tennessee. I mean, Tennessee, of course, was a good team kind of coming in, but Will Howard. And it was crazy enough because that Michigan game was abysmal. And it was obviously, of course, the worst they looked all year. And I was thinking to myself, well, there's a bunch of scrutiny about Ryan Day. Of course, I won the big game. Of course, I've had a lot of thoughts about Ryan Day in the past, but of course, they had the big win about about Ryan Day. Just did a really good one against Tennessee at their place, but the game against Oregon, I'll be frank to admit, I didn't really feel good about it. I mean, I just thought Oregon was just a much better team, but they went in and smacked them. I mean, Ohio State's really putting a ton of confidence right now. I think that's why this game against Texas is going to be a lot of fun, because I think that both teams are playing with a ton of high confidence, and I think one of the things, at least so far, about the college football playoff, Georgia's out. Oregon's out. A couple of the top seeded teams are already out, and they had a bye. And so I guess it might be just the rhythm or something like that. But at least in the past, I know for baseball, sometimes when you're the wild card team, it's not obviously the worst thing, because if you get at least through the first round and you're playing with a ton of confidence, then you basically have that chip of like, oh, we can beat anyone. All right. So, I mean, Oregon, of course, was a good team. We knew about that. But I thought that Ohio State in the last two games that they've had have had really good starts. And I think that's really a carry on in terms of how they feel like with their belief, kind of like what Texas had, to be honest. So
For sure. Do you mind if I give me one thought on the Ohio State game?
Yeah.
I would say the reason why I would pick Ohio State is because they're more physical. And like Isaiah was saying, we were doing a call last night when I got home from me, him, and a couple of guys. And Oregon is just flashy. That's all they are. And maybe I'm biased. Left-handed quarterbacks to me don't work in football anymore. And you're too flashy. And like you said, with how Ohio State is, these football playoffs are a game of endurance, and it's going to be physical. When's the last time we heard about Oregon being physical? Even going back to Chip Kelly.
I feel like they play in a conference that's not really that physical too, so they basically use that to their advantage. But then when they play a lot of the SEC schools and all the ACC schools and stuff like that, they get exposed.
Oh, for sure, man. But it was a good game. A lot of injuries too, but I gotta give him credit, man. I mean, shoot, it was a Will Howard.
Will Howard, yep.
Well, yeah, he showed why he should be the guy this year. And so, if you're what's his name at Syracuse, the guy last year, I mean, dude, you definitely shot yourself in the foot.
Yeah, McCord's actually done really well at Syracuse, to give him credit for this year. But John, we really appreciate you for sure coming on the program really quickly, because I know you said it off the air on the chat. We could talk about the Jimmy Butler thing really, really quick. How do you feel about that? I know that we kind of talked about your Cavs really quickly, but it sounds like that he wants out for a trade. I don't know what will happen to him, whether he goes out. More likely than not, it looks like he wants to go out west potentially, maybe a team like the Warriors, the Suns. What do you think happens here? I mean, my buddy is one of my college best friends is a Heat fan, and he posted on his Instagram, and he's pretty much all emotional about it because he was one of his favorite players. But he basically, his numbers are done. He's suspended now 7 games. He's pretty much now making it as like I wouldn't say like this distraction, but like he's just basically showing signs of like, get me the hell out of here.
Honestly, it makes me wonder why all this came out on the same day, right? He requested a trade and the suspension. That to me is a little too close to be like something's going on. Two, Jimmy Butler to me at this point is a fraud. He's never going to win an NBA championship. I think his best chance to win was with the Heat. You had this incredibly talented team, and you still couldn't get it done. He reminds me very similar to Stephon Diggs. Well, I think Butler is better at his position than Diggs is in his position right now.
I like the comparison, actually, yeah.
But I think just Butler, this is the same thing happened. You were decent in Chicago. Obviously, you couldn't fill the shoes of Derrick Rose. Then you go to Minnesota. Then you go to Philly's Philly. Like we get that, but then you go. There's a team after that. Was it Philly where he had the issue in practice?
Yeah, he was on the Philly team that Kawhi Leonard had that buzzer beater shot in the playoffs.
Exactly. So it just at this point, it's like insanity. The definition, right? Ben is doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results. And I think Jimmy Butler is expecting go to another team, and the grass is going to be greener on the other side. How many times are we going to try this before we eventually just realize he's talented, but he's just not going to win an NBA championship? He's 34, 35 years old. Eventually, but hey, buddy, I mean, maybe you take the Chris Paul route or someone else and potentially get a championship. And that's why I think I respect guys like Giannis and some of the others. Just stick with it. And I don't know. It's so weird. I'm surprised. Because why would you request a trade right now? Like, what value do you think
you're team in the East too? It's not like they're like completely out of it per se. I don't know if it's about the role that he's in right now. I know that the Heat have not played him in the last 2 games of the fourth quarter, which pretty much tells me that I don't know if it's confidence thing right now. I know that there's a lot of stuff off there about Pat Riley and his relationship's kind of been soured off at least the last couple of weeks. So whatever it is, it sounds like it's a lot of the behind the scenes stuff, and that could be that. I don't know.
It's just such a very weird and odd situation because, like you said, it's not like they're the worst team in the East or anything like that whatsoever. And it's just so odd and so shocking to me because does he really think him going to another division another team and think it's going to be any different? Like, what do you think his market value is going to be at this point? You've been passed around more than Stephon Diggs has with NFL teams. Like, what do you expect to happen? Like, I just don't understand. Like, you're not going to go to a new scenario, a new team again, like James Harden, and it's going to be all cakes and roses.
It looks like we lost John, but John looked like he was in a really good thought of what he was doing. So if we get John on back and kind of get the rest of his thoughts, we can. Looks like we got him right back.
Sorry about that. But yeah, I just think it's like him doing that isn't going to do anything. Your market value to me at this point, it's not even about your age, right? Like when LeBron went to LA, he was older, but his market value was high. You just were in the playoffs and consistently year after year after year. Butler been to 1 finals or 2 finals in his entire.
Yeah, you're 100% right. I mean, Butler, I don't know what he really wants at this point in time. Apparently, after the game yesterday, he was saying that he doesn't know if he feels like he is valued enough now playing in Miami. If he wants to really play his best basketball, that it's not there anymore, and maybe he wants to go somewhere else. But like you mentioned, like who knows if it's going to be somebody else's distraction, right? There's been so many instances in the past, at least in the NBA, where some stars maybe go somewhere else, and it's still kind of a similar situation. So we don't know. But I agree with you as well, too. It's a very odd situation. I mean, the fact that he is basically, serving like $52 million, for, being suspended, for not playing, pretty much says everything you need to know. I mean, that's obviously not a lot for NBA guys, but clearly he just doesn't want to be there. So, John, I do really want to appreciate my friend coming on, at least for the time being on my show. But you're welcome to come on anytime. And best of luck. If I don't talk to you at least on the air until the Texas and Ohio State game, best of luck, my friend. It should be a really good game. If you want, potentially we could do a pre or post game show for that. Just let me know off the air. Maybe we can figure something out. But if not, we'll see how that goes. And thanks for coming on, my friend.
For sure, man. Good luck to your Ohio State Buckeyes. Well, I'm just kidding. Have a good one, man.
Man. Have a good one. All right. So we appreciate John here for coming
Are
on the
you off
program. John, if you want to stay on, by all means, that's fine.
Oh no, I'm sorry. I thought your show was done. I'm so sorry. I'll talk to you later.
Okay. So we do want to appreciate really quick, John Alcorn, my friend, for coming on. We might get Isaiah back on here. I'm not sure. But got into some college football stuff. He's a Texas Longhorn fan. He's from that area down in Texas. And he's a Cavs fan. So we talked a little bit about that stuff. So we kind of, in terms of our show tonight, we kind of been a little bit off the air, railings and stuff like that. But yeah. So we're almost at the 2-hour mark here on the program. We got into a bunch of stuff in the NFL. We got into some college football, very little small college football, kind of gone a little off the rails, like I said tonight. But I'm just trying to think of what else we can really talk about. I mean, I could get into some of the more of that Jimmy Butler stuff, I guess, to say the least. If you want. Let's see here. So Jimmy Butler, there's reports out that he wanted to trade out of Miami. This was kind of transpiring for a while. And last week, Pat Riley, the owner of the Heat, pretty much said that we are not trading Jimmy Butler, no matter what the instances is going to be. But pretty much, I mean, Jimmy has really kind of made it clear that he has been very unhappy with his role, and he is not playing to the best of his availability. He has not been happy there. He's just made a lot of public remarks and a lot of stuff specifically that pretty much tells us signs that he just doesn't want to be there anymore. So it's really tough to see because he was kind of a anchor, a pillar for that Heat culture, I guess, in a way. He kind of brought that stuff for a while. He was always a thorn to my Celtics in the playoffs too. Even though I didn't really like that Heat team, you got to also give him a lot of respect. And he knocked my Celtics out a couple of times in the playoffs. They were kind of the underdog mentality story. And they had a lot of really good teams. But I think that the Jimmy and Miami tenure era is all but done. And I wouldn't be shocked if guys like Bam Adebayo or I don't know about Tyler Hero. I feel like Tyler Hero might be actually kind of their long-term guy there, him and Jaime Jaquez Jr. But who knows? Maybe it's just Jimmy in terms of like it's just a him type of thing with Pat Riley kind of off the court, or maybe it's just an overall team. And a lot of the other guys are basically kind of keeping it under closed doors. They don't really want to talk about kind of how they're perceived by the ownership with Miami. So it's going to be really interesting. But according to Shams, and Shams really was the one, I think it actually broke on Christmas Day, that Jimmy Butler reportedly was potentially asking for a trade. There really wasn't a lot of confirmation about it. Pat Riley made the follow-up a couple days ago and basically saying that he was not going to get traded. And then you had a couple days after, Jimmy Butler didn't want to play. Yeah. So now Jimmy is going to be – so they're actually let me see. This was 5 hours ago. Well, it's 7:06 now, so it's been a while. But it said that the Heat say, and this was actually from the Heat X or Twitter, basically saying this, which is crazy. It's not a lot of like Twitter or like mostly Twitter specifically. Like their pages say like they are open to trading this so and so player. They typically, most of the insiders pretty much say that, but typically not like the X like page specifically says that type of stuff. They typically kind of keep that stuff behind closed doors. But they said it. The Heat really just said it. So they pretty much, it's all that stuff is out there. But the first thing 5 hours ago said Miami Heat, Jimmy Butler has been suspended for 7 games for multiple instances of conduct detrimental to the team over the course of the season, in particular the last several weeks. And then you had a follow-up right from that from Sean saying the Heat say they're open to listening to all Jimmy Butler offers. Through his actions and statements, he has shown he no longer wants to be a part of this team. Jimmy Butler and his representatives have indicated that they wish to be traded. Therefore, we will listen to offers. That's pretty much all that she said and wrote. It basically was everything that he showed from, right from Christmas Day, saying that he potentially wants to trade out, and then the role that he had the last 2 games, like I was just talking to John about, in which he didn't even play him in the fourth quarter. They just thought that his effort level wasn't as good. And just maybe a new change of center might play him. He doesn't feel like he's playing the best basketball that he's playing right now. And that's that. I mean, he averaged, I think, only had 11 points the other night against the Pelicans. And then against the Pacers, I think he maybe dropped 11 or something, and he didn't play the fourth quarter. And he has been somebody that he's one of the best players for so long. So the fact that he didn't play in the fourth quarter for the last 2 games basically says everything you got to know. I just don't think that they really want to deal with him anymore. If he really wants to get out, he has the right to go out. I mean, he's a professional athlete. So this definitely would be something to monitor. I mean, the NBA trade deadline will be in a couple weeks. So definitely watch out for this and watch out for – because I do think that, the Heat – there was a report out by today saying that the Heat do personally feel – that they can be still a really good contender in the East, even if Jimmy Butler does leave. You still got Bam Adebayo, you got Tyler Hero, you got Jaime Hawkins Jr., you got Duncan Robinson. You still got a bunch of pieces that you can make an argument that they're not a great team in the East. They're not a bad team in the East. They're kind of in like a 7 seed, 8 seed, 9 seed. They're not going to, of course, win by their talent. I mean, when you have Jimmy Butler, you have a better team, but he's now more of a negative asset than not because he's basically not playing to his best availability, and he's pretty much made it known that he just doesn't want to be there anymore. So now you're trying to figure out in terms of what's next. And I could see the Heat going out and making a trade. Like Jimmy Butler, you're going to get something back for pretty good. I mean, he's still a good enough player. You're going to have to get some assets back, for if you're another team that wants to take his overall contract. So, what if he goes to a team like Phoenix, right? Does Phoenix look for it? I know there was rumblings about Bradley Beal. Bradley Beal's a guy that I could totally see being in Miami and fitting there like a glove. The Kings. I mean, De'Aaron Fox's name has been floating around in the offseason. I don't know if the Kings are going to be able to pay him long term, with the overall front office that they have. Mike Brown, of course, left throughout the holidays. So how does De'Aaron Fox kind of evaluate that situation over in Sacramento? Does he potentially welcome something where Jimmy goes to Sacramento? Sacramento's still a decent contention, and De'Aaron Fox goes to Miami, and that's that. I don't think it's as easy as kind of what plans to be, but I do think that there's some situations where he goes to a place like Phoenix, Sacramento. I mean, Golden State. I mean, Dennis Schroeder already went to Golden State, but Steph, of course, has been talking for a while about potentially getting like another star to pair with them. I think that Jimmy Butler potentially could be that perfect, like number 2. Kind of like the Paul George, I guess, to Philly. Where he's not really the main star, but he definitely has enough of, media attention where he's going to get the spotlight here and there if the true number 1 guy is not playing to his best availability or, the second tier guy starts to come alive. So, look at a guy like, Joel Embiid. He's the number 1 guy, of course, the main star there with Philly. but you got guys like Maxey, you got Paul George, and of course they're still going to get a lot of media attention, if they're playing so well. And Jimmy Butler, I think, kind of fits that, right? So, but this is definitely something to really take a look at, a couple weeks. I think this is really going to be a massive thing to follow. So I do really want to get into that, at least since we have the time. But I think we're going to call it a night. And I do apologize. I know we kind of went a little bit off like the rails here tonight in the program. We talked a little college football with my guy John Alcorn. We talked a little bit of stuff with Isaiah Leon throughout his work break tonight. But I think we're going to call at least some final thoughts really quick for you guys here on the program. For those that did join, thank you guys for joining. This is the first show of Kicking It with Kruse for the year of 2025, so I couldn't be any more appreciative and any more proud that we get another chance to have a great year ahead of us. A lot of great stuff when it comes to content. And next week, I think we're going to get a lot more stuff topic-wise. We're going to talk, of course, the playoffs. The seeding, of course, is going to be out. The schedule's going to be out, so we're going to get through all of that, at least to start. Baseball is going to be something next week we're going to definitely talk about. We're going to talk about everything baseball. I think we're going to have a massive, bigger thing baseball topic show next week and some college football. I don't know about NBA next week. If we get potentially a Jimmy Butler update, we'll talk about that. But I think outside of that, it's really just the standings. And there's really so much you can talk about with the standings because there hasn't really been a ton of flip-flopping. And there has been, it's a lot of couple teams that kind of flip-flop, from a 5 seed to like a 3 seed or, 3 seed to a 1 seed. But it kind of goes back and forth. I'm in the East, really, when you look at it, the top 3 teams. It's going to be the Celtics. It's probably going to be the Knicks and probably the Cavs. I mean, you can look at it, make an argument for some others, the Bucks or, Philly or, Orlando, Apollo and Franz come back. But, at the end of the day, if you're a team in the top 5 in the East, if you're a top 5 team in the West, you're more likely than not going to be a very solid team going to the playoffs. So that's really just so much you can talk about. But I will talk a little NBA potentially next week. But hope you guys have had a great start to the new year. I know I have myself. And hope you guys have a good weekend, the first official weekend of 2025. Hope you guys relax and really enjoy what 2025 really brings us. And I know January is kind of a quiet month, of course, after the holidays. But it's also kind of a month where I know that the holidays, as great as exciting as it is, it's very at times can be very stressful. And I think that now this is a time where people can kind of get back to the swing of decompressing and kind of get back to reality here. So that's that. But thank you guys for joining Kicking with Kruse. Really appreciate that. If you guys want to see more of my content here, look it down here in the ticker bar below. Follow us here at MI6 and I'm6 Sports Network on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Also, feel free to follow my Twitter at BenCruz144, which is right down here in the ticker as well, all lowercase. So thank you guys for joining here, Kicking with Kruse. We'll make sure to be back here next week. TBD in terms of the date. Not sure yet specifically on that, but make sure to join into that as well. And we will get you guys an outro here to conclude tonight's program. And thank you guys for joining, and have a great evening and have a great rest of your weekend to start off the first weekend of 2025.
Oh my God! Big goal to go from the 2. Toss sweep one for James White. Cuts it up to the right arm. Cuts it upfield. Driving forward. Diving to the goal line. A touchdown and a title for the Patriots. I can't believe it. Play clock at 5. Pass is intercepted at the goal line by Malcolm Butler.
45 remaining. Tatum drives down and throws it down. Bases loaded. 2 out. Hard hitting to right. Back at the wall. Tie game. Big Poppy.
No icing for the first time in 39 years. The Boston Bruins have won the Stanley Cup.
Anything's possible!